Welcome to the Beyond Pain podcast with your host, Joe Gambino and Joe LaVacca. Join the two Joes, two physical therapists, as they discuss how to navigate the uncertainties of pain so you can move beyond it and get back to the activities you love most. This podcast is for Joe, and their guests to share their clinical thoughts and ideas based on their collective clinical experiences. Can this information be for you? Maybe, but we cannot know for sure. Therefore, it is always worth talking to your healthcare provider to make the best decisions in your care before you implement anything on this podcast. And please use common sense.
Welcome back into the Beyond Pain podcast. I am one of your hosts, Joe Gambino. I'm here with our other host, Joe LaVacca. You can find us both on Instagram at Joe Gambino DPT for myself, at Strength in Motion _PT for LaVacca over there. If you want to follow the show, it is on Instagram, Beyond Pain Podcast, and also on YouTube, Cups of Joe _PT if you want to watch us there. That's it. Short and easy. We're back into it. We have a quick hitter today. We're talking about the big three strength exercises: squat, bench, deadlift. Do you need them? Do you want them? What else can you do? I think it's, in my mind, I hear it all the time that people feel the need that they have to squat, they have to deadlift, they have to bench, and even if they have pain, right? Sometimes it's a identity. They just like powerlifting, and sometimes it's I just think that I need to do those things. So I feel like this is going to be a beneficial conversation for a lot of our listeners and help them understand whether they need it or not, and maybe some other options that they can do if they are finding that maybe from a mobility perspective, pain perspective, or whatever else that they just struggle with one of those three things. Thoughts there, Joey boy?
Well, yes, this definitely is going to be a conversation that comes up weekly. So I'm glad that we're having it here. Do you need to squat? Do you need to deadlift? Do you need to push? Yes, right? I mean, this is just what life has in store for you, right? Getting up out of chairs, lifting things from the floor, opening doors, pulling things out of shelves, putting them back up, right? So yes, you are going to find that in life, those movements are essentially superpowers. And if we're looking at long-term health and lifespan data, well, the more independent you are usually correlates with grip strength and quad strength and balance. And, we could probably break down every single variable. So bringing in strength consistently will help you in the long term. And I think that's always everyone's goal now, especially with all this functional medicine and biohacking. People don't usually talk to me about these 4, 8, 12-week increments anymore in their workouts. They're talking to me about, I want to age better. I want to, live longer. And this is a big shift in the conversation.
I don't know, Joe, if the conversation is because of all the biohacking or just because we're getting older, and as we're approaching 30, the people that we talk to are more like, hey, I want to age better. Back in our 20s, all I cared about was biceps and how much I could squat, deadlift, and bench. I don't know, Joe. Could also just be our generation now.
Yeah, that's fair. I guess, our population seems pretty similar, but then we haven't really niched down ultra into like athletic performance, return to sport testing, field progressions, team things So yeah, I guess I don't really know what the high school and collegiate populations are saying. It is probably not that. So good point, Joe. But I think going back to the point of, yeah, all of our clients to some degree need to do these things. How you do those things is less of a worry for me. So when people come in and they want to strength train and they quote unquote need to squat and they need to deadlift, the first question I always ask them is, okay, well, what have you been told? Why do you need these things? And it's, because I need to get up and out of a chair. I need to do this. So it's functional, blah, blah, blah. And I think that narrative of functional exercise is slowly fading away a bit, luckily. And I think just the shift to what's the goal of your exercise is more important. So if I'm using the squat because that's a good leg strengthening exercise for me, and it's a good way to target my quads, and this is a common answer I'll get. Then I also introduce people to a seated leg extension, a split squat, a step up, a step down. We could probably rattle off 17 other knee dominant or quad based exercises, which will also strengthen your leg. Same thing with the deadlift. Well, I need to target my glutes or my hamstrings. Well, okay, we can do that with a hamstring curl. We can do that with a hip thruster. We can do that with a single leg bridge. It doesn't need to be a deadlift if you do not have the capacity for a deadlift or a squat. And by capacity, I mean how your joint moves, what is your pain levels, and then maybe to some degree, do you actually have a local deficit due to an injury or a surgery? And the easiest way to think about that is ACL reconstruction, Achilles reconstruction, right? Rotator cuff repair. I have to strength train to get better. I have to squat to get better. Well, yeah, but you also need a quad to squat. I need to do calf raises to strengthen my Achilles. Yeah, but you also need a gastroc soleus complex to do that. So when there is these local deficits preventing people from squatting or hinging or pressing, we do really need to work on those local deficits, because that is the constraint, or that's the block to getting you to do those things that you want to do. Assuming you don't have that, we're not following some post-op protocol where we have to gradually bring you up over the course of 3, 6, 9, 12 months. And you're just like, I have pain all the time. Well, then here's the good news. We can still build you a program that allows you to push and pull and squat and hinge and carry, because there are 100 different ways to push and pull and squat and hinge and carry. And we can make all of these movements more attainable and suitable for you and your body and your current fitness level, rather than force feeding you into the big three because you have to sort of thing. Where do you stand on that?
Yeah, I like that approach. I think I'm of the mindset that you don't want to put yourself in a box, so to speak. So if something is uncomfortable and it is painful, as you mentioned, there are lots of options that you can do today, right? Like, and options that typically most people don't really like to do. Like, I don't know anyone in their right mind that's like, I look forward to a rear foot elevated split squat today. But great alternative if you're struggling with squatting or it's painful, but you can do stuff on, one leg is much more tolerable to your body. A lot of times for lower back pain, right? That is the case for some people. And maybe back squat is uncomfortable. Maybe so even so is front squatting, right? But we can bring someone on a single leg and they feel good, right? So again, a lot of different variations, different things you can do. Uh, and I'll just leave it there at that. I think, goals is the most important factor in all this, right? Hey, I want to age better. I want to be able to get up off the ground. I want to be able to get out of a chair. I want to be able to go run a 5K with my daughter, whatever that looks like for you, right? That is the only thing that matters. It doesn't matter the tools that get you there, right? So if we're looking at getting you to run again, right? Like, okay, sure, we need to figure out what the mobility issues are, what's driving pain, how can we start to bring that down? But we can still get strong. Cross training is just as important to someone who's running or wants to get out of a chair, right? Like doing strength training has a lot of really beneficial things for somebody. So I think you can just modify whatever it is that you want. Find what you can do today. If you really find it, as like we talked earlier about like identity versus like, I just think I need it. If you just think you need it, you probably can just find other modifications and you probably don't even need to think about looking back. If it's something that's important to you, maybe powerlifting is your sport, or maybe you do Olympic lifting, or maybe you like CrossFit, and there's a whole lot of these movements in there. Well, let's modify. Let's let you get a training effect now. Let's help build you some confidence around your pain and movement. And then let's work on the tools that will allow you to get back into squatting and maybe deadlifting and benching and whatever those exercises look like. And then also I find that sometimes people also are very fixated on like how my feet are positioned or how my hands are positioned in a bench. And I have to do deadlifts with my feet together and I can't do sumo because that's cheating or whatever that is. And sometimes modifications just like that can make a whole big difference for somebody. I know squatting is that kind of like big one that the PT industry and the fitness industry talks about, going a little bit wider, turning your feet out, like I think for anyone listening, if you were working with me, there's two tests I have. There's my eye test and then there's the feel test. What does it feel like to that person? If you're not working with anyone, you're just listening to this podcast, you're going to the gym later and you're going to test these things out, it's the feel test. If you were squatting and you went slightly wider or you just turned your feet out more and you felt like you got deeper, it felt smoother, it didn't feel stiff, it wasn't painful, it's probably the position that you should be squatting in. Same thing with bench press. If you decide to go a little, like I was benching with my old grip, I was feeling a little discomfort of my shoulder. I went a little bit wider. All of a sudden, benching felt really great, felt stronger than it has felt in a long time. It's probably a grip that I should continue to go with, right? So I think, we learn these things from the fitness industry and the PT industry, learn one thing and it can swing it in a completely terrible direction. We take it too far. But then I think there's all kind of, there's so much information out there. There's people who are trying to just learn about fitness, learning about their pain, learning about rehab, that there's, they put themselves into these boxes because they've learned from this PT or they saw it on this YouTube video and they gave it a try. And now you're kind of like stuck in one way when movement is, I think, kind of like it's exploratory, right? It's not just I'm stuck in X, Y, and Z. I have to do this exactly this way. And this is the process, right? Movement is what we make of it. It is how we move our bodies in space. I think play needs to be a part of it. We've talked about play on this podcast. I think getting people into different things and challenging them in different ways and move them in different positions is always going to be good for somebody. And anytime somebody is in pain, novelty is a really, really strong thing. Whenever you give somebody a new input to their body, as long as it's not a painful one, people usually tolerate that pretty well and move in a good direction. So I'll leave it there, Joe. Take your thoughts.
Yeah, well, I'm glad that you brought up a few things. And number one, these 3 lifts, your squat, your hinge, your bench press, are called power lifts. There are people who spend their sport doing powerlifting competitions, and that's when they go and actually compete in the one lift. And they train that one lift over and over and over again. And for you and I, or our clients who are creative directors and lawyers or dentists and social workers, they're lucky to get to the gym once a week or twice a week on a good week that often is not consistent, and either doing things on their own or maybe with trainers who are just constantly varying things or switching things up too often, too soon. So you're never really getting the same practice that an athlete in the sport is. So the idea of I have to back squat because that's what the fitness industry says is crazy. Let's all remember the back squat is a made up exercise. Our cavemen forefathers, our hunter-gatherer forefathers did not back squat. They, to your point as well, played, they interacted, they explored things in their environment. They ran, they walked, they had social support systems, right? The list goes on what kept, quote unquote, them healthy. We created a lot of these exercises and fitness-based movements because that is our biohack. That is the hack for our modern lifestyles, that we can live now to 80, 85 and beyond because we invented the gym. And now I don't have to run 12 miles hunting and gathering. I don't have to climb a tree anymore. Bringing the idea back to, again, your other point, there's no specific position for this either. So many times people's squats change dramatically when we just slightly elevate their heels and they're disappointed because, I'm cheating. No, you're not. You're using a tool to help you get better at the motion you want to get better at. Isn't that the point? When we change it from a back squat to a front squat. Well, I don't really like front squats, but the weight here actually is your coach to stay upright and work the position better and have less pain or get the desired results that you want of muscle soreness or hypertrophy or strength. And then it's the same thing with the deadlift, right? Bending your knees slightly, keeping your chest position a little taller, just does wonderful things for people. And it's so simple. And yet they're focused on the wrong idea, or the idea that I have to look the same as everyone else or do this motion the same as everyone else. And if we go back and YouTube our powerlifting competitions, those people are all different shapes and sizes. They're taking all different stances. They don't probably pass your eye test or my eye test during their max lifts, and that's okay. But they train over and over and over again. That is their sport. Where you and I maybe squat once a week or deadlift once a week. That's not going to be enough to get better at something that we want to improve. So take a wider stance, let your toes turn out. These are where, with assessments that you and I do, we can make sense of people's positions. When we're looking at hip rotation, like we mentioned, when we're looking at knee rotation, like we mentioned, when we're looking at ankle dorsiflexion, or even maybe some segmental mobility of the spine, we could probably guess what's going to be the most comfortable position for you. But that's because we're assessing you. And I think the biggest issue I have with a lot of trainers teaching their clients deadlifts and squats is that every day in the gym, I hear it. Keep your toes straight ahead. Keep your back up. Do this, do that. And it's like, whoa, hold on. I actually know that person. They were a patient of mine. It's the complete opposite thing of what I actually told them to do to find comfort in their body. But yet we're so contained into this idea of perfect form. There's only one way of doing things. There's a right way of doing things. And that might be true for some of us, but I think the bigger goal is trying to find the optimal, most efficient, effective way for you, and then repeating that over and over again. And if it's not a barbell, it could be a kettlebell, it could be a dumbbell, it could be supine on your back versus standing. I mean, there is a hinge pattern everywhere. There's a squat pattern everywhere, and there's a push pattern everywhere in every position. So it doesn't have to look like a bench press for you to get the most out of your pushing exercises. It doesn't have to look like a squat for you to get the most out of your knee dominant exercises, and so on and so forth. So I think that would be, big piece takeaways for me right there.
Yeah, I like that. I have two thoughts based on what you said. And the first one just being like, you mentioned seeing someone being cued in a very specific way. And this is something that brings me back to my personal training days. And
Did you say cute?
Cute?
Like cute?
I don't know what I said
Cute?
because you got me. I don't know. I probably did, but that's not the word I intended to say.
I was just looking at somebody like looking all cute in their squats and their bench press, and I'm walking over to them. I'm like,
Cute,
hey, that's a
cute. Yes,
cute.
no T.
Okay.
No T. No
So
T.
you said cute. That's why it's throwing
Look
me
at
off
that.
there.
Look at
So
that
listeners,
outfit.
listeners.
No, it's
Okay,
all
so if you
about
heard,
height.
you had cute like I did. No, Joe said Q,
Yes.
no T. All right, Joe,
Yes.
continue.
Thank you for the
clearing that up.
clarification there. We need to be clear on what I'm saying here. But yeah, when we're cueing somebody, this is something that I've believed in for a very long time. That if say I'm coaching somebody and I'm giving them a cue and they don't figure it out and their movement looks the same, and I give them another cue and their movement doesn't change, and I give them another cue and their movement doesn't change. At some point, it's not the coaching, right? It's not the failure of the person to be able to understand it. It's very likely that we're trying to ask them to get into positions that they can't get into. So in these cases, all we have to do is make a subtle change to foot position, to hand position, to the starting position, whatever it looks like for that particular lift. And then all of a sudden the cues make a whole lot more sense to somebody. And sometimes that could be mobility restriction. It can be a whole lot of different things. But that would be one point that I want to bring up here. And the other one that I wanted to bring up is, we were talking about people who, hey, we're training for the sport. It's powerlifting, it's Olympic lifting, and they do a lot of it to get good at their sport so they can lift tremendous amount of weights and, potentially break records and compete at a high level. And then there's us who just enjoy lifting for the sake of lifting. I mean, I enjoy powerlifting. I'll bench, squat, deadlift. I enjoy doing those things. But I think we just need to remember that for the people like us, we've talked about this a lot on the podcast, that movement variability, a big theme on the show, is very, very important. And when you train for it at an elite level, you sacrifice movement variability to become good at those things, right? You need to train the exact same pattern, the foot position, everything, right? So that those tissues can adapt very specifically to be able to handle high amounts of load. When our job is not to get paid that way or compete at a high level, maybe you still want to get really strong in those pathways, but we need to have movement variability. So we do need to explore outside of those typical buckets and do sumo deadlift sometimes and not just conventional. We need to do trap bar sometimes and not just barbell. And maybe we need to do some RDLs or some rack pulls versus being off the floor. Changing things will change how tissues load and give us more movement variability. It's the same reason why we do single leg deadlifts and we add rotational components to some of these things. Why sometimes we do suitcase deadlifts or, unilateral front squats with kettlebells, because it starts to change the way that we load things and how we have to figure out how to produce force. And when we're looking to feel good, be better movers, have better control of our body because we want to go play golf or go run or go play basketball or whatever it is for that person, like those are the things that carry over, right? Having more movement options, more movement skill, not how much can I squat, how much could I deadlift. There's definitely going to be a point of diminishing returns. Once you can squat or maybe 1 to 1.5 times your body weight, like getting to 2 times your body weight, is that going to make a significant impact to how athletic you feel or your life? Probably not, but doing some of these other things and exploring different planes of motion and exploring different variations and doing unilateral versus, bilateral, one leg versus two legs, like all those things at the end of the day, I think will help the average person move better, feel better, perform better across the board.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely, man. I think that's a perfect way to end it. Joe?
Cute.
Cute. That was a cute episode. Joe, thank you for your time, your thoughts. We love you. Listeners, thank you for your time. And please share your thoughts with us. Comment on what you think about the big three. Let us know about future topics you'd like to listen to. And don't forget to come back next week for another exciting episode of the Beyond Pain